Yeah, everyone got a flower? Wonderful. So now that we have our flowers individuated out from the bouquets, I invite us each to just take a look at our flowers. And if you're at home on Zoom, if you have a flower or an image of a flower nearby, just to look at it. How unique it is. How much diversity even within this one flower. Mine has pink petals with white and yellow and flecks of magenta in them. And I can see where some insects may have nibbled and fed themselves on part of it. And I invite us too to think about the person who brought this flower in today, because that's also what this represents. That person with all their unique beauty and all their unique brokenness. That person who's here journeying alongside of us, helping us just by being here, just by being present, in addition to all the other things that they do for our community. So we're carrying all of that in our hearts today with these flowers. Flower communion feels especially necessary and profound for me this year. Not only because those of us on school and church calendars are a little spent by this point in the year. Anybody works? Yeah? Maybe everybody's a little spent by this time of year, and we could really use some flowers to get to the finish line. And not only because we need the promise of spring always every year. Even here in California, the promise of spring matters. And even because the inevitable thorns and muck of life make blossoms so much more precious. All of those things are true this year, they're true every year. But this year, flower communion feels especially necessary and powerful to me because what it stands for is very explicitly under assault. Diversity, religious freedom, pluralism, and democracy. Flower communion feels especially necessary and powerful this year because it symbolizes solidarity. As Veronica said, flower communion symbolizes showing up together, being present, bringing something of value to the shared effort of collective flourishing. For me, it symbolizes not only what we aspire to here at UUCSR, but also the powerful forms of interfaith activism occurring across the country and world. Last weekend, Mother's Day weekend, I joined over 500 people for a 12-mile interfaith pilgrimage for Palestine, saying no to war profiteering and yes to life. Through Oakland and Alameda, we carried banners and signs with huge images of children's eyes. Because the children of the world, our children, and every child is our child, they're watching us, watching how we respond to this moment of rising fascism, war, and ecological destruction. We walked, sang, prayed, and paused at various points along the way for rituals led by clergy from various traditions, united by shared commitments to life, to peace with justice, to freedom for all people, to a healthy planet where life can flourish. And it occurred to me that this is what flower communion looks like outside our walls. The faithful insistence that our differences are not barriers to flourishing, but key to it. Just look at nature, right? And yesterday, Black Unitarian Universalist leaders and allies joined interfaith clergy and organizers in Selma, Alabama, to repeat the historic Voting Rights March of 1965 across the Edmund Pettus Bridge that led not only to Bloody Sunday, but also the passage of the Voting Rights Act, a critical step on the road to building our democracy. The Voting Rights Act that was just gutted by the Supreme Court in order to draw voting maps that exclude Black and brown Americans. As faith leaders, organizers and community members gathered for song and prayer before yesterday's March for Voting Rights. They sang, and I'm not going to sing it because I won't do it justice, so I'll tell you what they sang. I don't feel in no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe they brought me this far to leave me. My friends, nobody told us the road to beloved community would be easy. There are briar patches and sinkholes and mud aplenty. But there are wildflowers along the roadside. There is beauty and strength within us and all around us. And when we come together across our differences, rooted in our shared values and our visions of collective thriving, we are beloved community. In those moments, we are exactly what we seek. And no one can take that away from us. To me, flower communion is as much about who we are out there as it is about who we are in here. And the two are connected. Right now, at this very moment, leaders of our federal government are gathered on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., with conservative Christian clergy for a day of prayer to, quote unquote, rededicate America to God in the form of white Christian nationalism. The story they are telling on the National Mall today is an old story, one that has long been used to justify tremendous violence at home and abroad. It's a story of conquest and exclusion. It is a story similar to the one Reverend Norbert Chopek died resisting. When the Nazis arrived at the Czech border in 1938 and demanded annexation, Reverend Norbert Chopek was fierce and outspoken in his resistance, telling his congregation they must be ready to, quote, defend human dignity, freedom, and justice from violence, lies, and lawlessness. David Weiss writes that under Nazi occupation, life in the Unitarian congregation in Prague continued with fervor, as well as in the 6 mission centers it sponsored around the country. Unable to buck the German occupation, the people fueled their inward fellowship with all the energy they had. Maya Chopek reported that the flower communion was being celebrated both in Prague and in the missions, now as a mystical embrace of dignity, beauty, and freedom in the very shadow of death. In 1941, the Nazis arrested Reverend Norbert, and a year later he was sent to Dachau concentration camp, where it is said that he celebrated his final flower ceremony, inviting fellow prisoners to find whatever bit of greenery or scrap of beauty they could scavenge from the prison yard for the ceremony. Reverend Norbert reminded them of their inherent worth and dignity. In this grim context, the ritual testified to the irrepressible freedom of the human spirit, the presence of beauty, and the enduring power of human connection, even in the worst circumstances. Now, whether or not that is how it happened in Dachau, or whether it happened at all, by the time Maya Chopek brought the flower ceremony to the United States, it had become a ritual of resilience and resistance, and it still is today. The flower ceremony, sweet as it is, isn't a diversion from difficult truths or hardships. Rather, it's a gentle fierceness, as Teresa Schwartz puts it, reminding us that in the midst of brokenness, there is still beauty, and celebrating that beauty in whatever small but important ways is how we stay free. The flower communion, writes David Weiss, is such a simple ritual, almost cute, but so much more. Unfazed by peril, undaunted before damage, an unassuming ritual bearing beauty and truth. We are priceless glory, uniquely needy, uniquely gifted. We belong to one another. Creating community is birthing joy. In a perilous future, these truths may seem no stronger than a sprig of lilac, but I tell you, they are priceless treasure. Priceless treasure, my friends. Priceless treasure. Raise your flower and say it with me. Priceless treasure.